On March 5, 1994, Jose Escamilla videotaped 16 minutes of UFO footage in broad daylight, 9 miles south of Roswell, New Mexico. He thought this would be the only UFO encounter he and his family would ever have. 14 days later, he captured something on videotape that would forever change his life. He discovered something flying in the skies that just didn't look normal. At first, he thought they were insects flying close to the video camera. After a number of tests, he found out they were not insects. He found out they were not birds. Instead, he discovered something that will forever change the way we accept reality. They are called rods.
First, I was kind of reluctant to release information on rods because, as you saw there, I thought they were 100 feet long, and we just didn't know enough about this phenomenon. I'd never experienced it before. The UFO object, you see a disc shape, all right, that's, conforms with the, most of the sightings that have occurred over the last 50 years, but rods were a total different thing. They looked like flying snakes, and we now have absolute evidence that these things are real because now we've got insects and birds shot at that shutter setting, and now we have rods, and there's a difference because we now have solid evidence of these things, and we're starting to see a familiarity in the way their flight characteristics are. They definitely have a certain flight characteristic. They don't fly through the air, they swim through the air, and that's a different characteristic than I'd seen before. And they're swimming. They're going just as fast as fish. That's why I call them skyfish, because they're deliberate in their motion.
It's a vertical pit. It has a sloped bottom. It is so immense that you can literally take the Empire State Building and set it inside this pit, and no part of the Empire State Building would touch any of its sides. And just as they leap off of towers and buildings and bridges and things like that, base jumpers are now leaping off the lip of the cave as sport.
When I first got there for the first time in 1999, I was expecting to see rods zipping by, but in slow motion. Now, what this shows is the agility and the speed in which swallows can fly. As you can see here, the base jumper is probably reaching terminal velocity, which is close to 90 to 100 miles an hour, and the swallow is able to go from 0 to 90 practically within 4 or 5 seconds. So this is a very fast and agile bird. Now, the next sequence is the full sequence where the swallow chases after a rod.
Now, why this shot is important is that, well, for one thing, we actually show a bird and a rod flying side by side. So obviously the rod is not a misfilmed bird.
Then I started remembering and recalling how fast these things are. They're like bam, bam, zipping right by me. And here, right about here, is where the rod senses it's being chased and where the swallow takes a dive at the rod, and here you see them both on the run.
But here we have a rod that actually changes its flight path and is actually able to outfly, outmaneuver, and out-accelerate the swallow. What we want to show you now are some of the specific video clips that we show the best evidence for rods, showing it as being a unique phenomena and not just a blurred insect or bird. And in particular in showing the speed in which they travel and some of their flight dynamics, which are not shared with bugs or birds, which again is more evidence for my hypothesis of what we're dealing with here is a creature that's unique on this planet. It doesn't fly like any other creature, doesn't fly like insects, doesn't fly like birds, and has a unique physiology and physical structure unlike anything else we see. Another shot that we have from the cave in Mexico is where the rod is actually entering the shadow of the cave. Now, why this is important is that we have the base jumper in the background, and so we have him as one of our reference points. We know that he's approximately 6 foot in height. We know that his speed is going to be right around terminal velocity, so anywhere between like 90 and maybe 120 miles an hour. And at the same token, this was taken in the afternoon, and we have a shadow that's being cast by the leading edge of the cave that's on the leading edge that's closest to the sun. And this shadow is leaving a line across the back wall of the cave, so you can clearly see the angle of the shadow falling through the mouth of the cave. Now, the base jumper is in, like I said, kind of in the rear 2/3 of the cave from the point of the videographer, where you can see about 3/4 of the rod is in shadow, and just the last little section of it is still remaining in the sunlight. And if that was motion blur, you would not be able to get that effect. You would get a streaking effect out of it. So what we see is basically, we know we have a snapshot of a cylindrical shaped animal in this case. And again, we also have the base jumper in the background. He's not unusually blurred, and we know that he's traveling at a high rate of speed also. Bruce Maccabee was able to make some calculations off of this, and his rough calculations were able to give us an approximation to the size of this rod. And we feel in this particular shot that on the small end the rod was maybe 2 feet in length, and on the large end it could have been easily 4 feet in length.
I've seen the evidence. I've talked to several people that have been involved with rods, and I think it belongs in this study. The UFO mystery is broad. There are a lot of things causing UFO sighting reports. Rods is probably one of them. The evidence I've seen is kind of overwhelming. You get video after video after video of very strange things flying around in our air, some of them very rapidly, some of them large, some of them small. We're dealing with a mystery that's part of the science of studying these things, and rods are important to us as a result.
I'm an inventor. My name is Dr. Sonny Ward. Some of the things I've invented is like electric cell or a fuel cell that the more you discharge it. Recently I invented that. The more charged it becomes. I've lived in a house, haven't paid any power bill for over 14 years. I've got a super high mileage car that holds 9 world records. I've invented a product that makes you, apparently rejuvenates and regenerates your body tissue so you get younger and grow your hair back, and a few other things too. Well, that's called the implosion machine. That's been demonstrated. In fact, at one time we had it at Exotic Research. The old handheld model, we had it at the Tesla organization several years ago. But what it does is you can put anything in there, like a rock, medical needles, glass, cinder block, and it will make it literally disappear. And recently there's been a lot of renewed interest in it because we have a computer-controlled model for getting rid of the deposition of plutonium, which we have already done and registered with the government, or also what are called the sharps. Those needles from the diabetics, Botox, and like that. You can just put them in there and it's like a bug zapper, they disappear. The core temperature is roughly 40 to 50,000 degrees. We even put a chicken drumstick in there and it ate it right up. So we thought like small organs or medical waste, and doctors have looked at it, electrical engineers have looked at it, and they want to know where the material goes. And so that's a gridlock right now, but hopefully we'll find out in the future.
So you don't know where the material goes?
Well, it disappears. I don't know. I have no idea. What I believe happens, it's called the dissociation of matter. This picture here, when he's talking about the implosion machine, this picture here is a picture of it, and the core temperature, like I expressed before, is around 50,000 degrees. You can put anything in that and it will disappear.
How can all the heat just be trapped inside the light?
Because it makes its own vacuum. It makes a sphere in its own vacuum. Similar to, well, it is a star or the sun.
And do you use certain chemicals to make that happen, or how does it happen?
Electrons. It's pure electrons, electron flow. I do it by the same way Tesla did, by charging a capacitor and then having a large discharge. Tesla stated that it was more powerful than TNT. Of course, that was a known explosive at his time. And also the hydrogen bomb that we detonated is also an implosion bomb. Also the plutonium bomb, one of the bombs that destroyed Japan was a plutonium bomb, is the implosion bomb.
You mentioned something briefly, I didn't really catch it. You said that you were doing something with this machine, the implosion machine, with the government and plutonium. Can you tell us, go into depth about that?
Well, in 1990, probably 4, I was in Washington, D.C. That was right after Chernobyl. The Russians were there. And I, through a state senator, I got it introduced as the deposition for plutonium. And it's on the docket. Bob deGrassi was in charge from the Department of Defense and Department of Energy at that time, so it's actually listed. They provided me with some U-235, U-239, and 41. 41's actually plutonium. U-239 is kind of between, and anyway, it burned them all up by gunpowder with no radiation or no exposure, no gamma, anything being emitted. It's called vitrification without radiation.
Why would the government give you plutonium? Isn't that nuclear?
Well, later on, yeah, it was. So when somebody blew the whistle on me, after I passed the test, then it became, I was under close surveillance, and they sent me some letters that said it was top security, and I better not take it out of the United States.
My name is Dr. Thury, and I was born and raised in Provence. I spent the last 30 years rekindling the work of Nostradamus. The type of astrology that I practice is about 500 years old and has nothing to do with the astrology as practiced today. He gave me the unarguable ability to predict what happened 9/11 2 years before it happened. And again, those predictions are well documented and they are printed in both of my books. And the printing process makes those predictions totally unarguable. Again, that is for you to investigate. In terms of September 11, a year and a half ago, before September 11, I was doing my yearly book called Moon Power, which is Universal Guidance and Predictions. And I knew that the moon was coming in a specific area of the chart, and I knew what the dragon tail and head was going to do to the world at large. So I wrote every single thing that took place in New York, 9/11, and I've used the right words, the right sentences, and I was so sure of myself that I put everything on my website on September 2nd, 2001, and I printed it in my books 2 years or so before the 9/11. If you can focus on that, I'll leave it for a second.
Could you read it for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I am going to tell you what I wrote about a year and a half, nearly 2 years before September 11. I wrote, full moon, September 2nd, 2001, in the sign of Pisces. Pisces rules the Middle East, religion, and will produce all sorts of bad aeronautic accidents. Just be ready to provide as much help as needed and do not lose faith in the future. Expect a general feeling of hopelessness plaguing the media. Deceiving news will take place and affect many of us. Some desperate souls will fall for Neptune's suicidal tendency. This trend will be very difficult for some, but do not lose faith in yourself. Get all the help you can to fight Neptune's depressive tendency. Keep busy and let go of the past. Life must go on. Expect shocking news, surprising news, and even incredible news to take place soon, and see the real power of Uranus, the planet of sudden release of energy in action. And all this will be forcing the government to take drastic actions. That's the first prediction that I did, and in my other book I wrote this. In Sagittarius, religion, Pluto, regeneration, death, will promote a disturbing wave of religious fanaticism that will plague the world. In the US, the impact of Pluto in Sagittarius has already spoken, with some religious fanatic committing serious crime, and many will have to pay the ultimate price for their destructive behavior. Some Middle Eastern residents have also shocked the world and will keep spawning suicidal bomb attacks on major European and US cities. The contract they signed with their manipulators before blowing themselves up, surrounded by the highest possible numbers of innocent victims, promised the martyr 20 or more virgin after an immediate entrance to paradise. If you can read between the words and hear every single word that I just mentioned predict inaugurable what was going to happen September 11. And all of this was on my website September 2nd for the world to see. And all of this is still on my website. I never touched it since the day it was up there. So when you go to my website, click on the plane and realize that I am not, for God's please forgive me, I am not using the death and the dramatic experience of the families to bring myself recognition or money. What I want to do is to make people aware that there is real thing out there. There is real people that have real gift in predictive astrology. I had UFOs experiences, 4 of them to be precise. And how can you keep a straight face? By saying to people, yes, I have been inside a flying saucer, and yes, they downloaded the entire secret of the universal mind in a matter of a few seconds.
Let me ask you really quick, could you tell me about your first experience with aliens and what race they were or what exactly they did for you?
Well, my first experience, I was only 7 years old, and every single night they were coming into my bedroom. That was an attic at that time, and they used to do all sorts of things in me, but I was much too young to really connect with this phenomenon. That was in 1957. I was barely 7 years old, and that was my first experience. It was pretty dramatic, though, but that was my first experience as a child.
Can you tell me, what did they do to you there, and what's the thing with over the face?
Well, in August 11, 1991, I was going to Anaheim, California, with my wife, and for some reason, to cut the story short, I ended up after Los Angeles. And we've done so much miles, not knowing how, when, or where we end up out there. And then I was regressed. And then I was sucked into the flying saucer, and out from the top of the flying saucer, a helmet came down and covered my head, and I froze. I literally turned into a piece of steel and all electrics. And the next thing I know, I was be downloaded some incredible information, especially those that forced me to paint my entire house with symbols and astrological symbols, and from that point to go and rekindle Nostradamus astrology, and this is where I start to display my predictive abilities. I'd like to take this opportunity to let one of my best friends, astrologer, also introduce himself and give the world some of his honest feedback on a specific date that he worked out for November the 8th, 2003.
Hi, my name is Johnny Marahiel, and I'm an astrologer and have been for some 30 years. I have discovered a chart of a moment in our future, which is November 8th, 2003, or November 9th, if you're on the other side of the date line, where we are pretty certain that it has the astrological signature of a new birth of consciousness for mankind. So this implies astrologically that this is a great moment of consciousness awareness, or of a shift in consciousness from one state where we concentrate on a third-dimensional planet to another state where we concentrate and are able to perceive a fifth-dimensional planet. This is a stargate into the ascended world.
I understand how the mind is interacting with universal forces, reacting to the outside stimuli produced by the stars, which are more than dead rock, hanging out there for the sake of beauty. Cosmic consciousness is not something you're going to gain in 5 minutes. I happen to have it by accident through my interaction with extraterrestrial, but I teach astropsychology to the world. John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, is a student of mine. Not to forget surgeons, police officers, psychiatrists, psychologists, and a very normal person like you could also gather cosmic consciousness and understand what it means to be human. That's the gift that the universe has given me. That's the gift that travelers from the universe have given me. and I'm very compassionate in helping and healing the world, and most of all, to free mankind from religious poisoning and free mankind from stupidity that jail its spirits against mental exploration.
My name is Mary Ebersketcher, and I do energy rebalancing, sound healing, and body work. And I also utilize breath with my body work. So breathing is a very important thing. So basically how I begin a session is to find the points on the body that are tight and blocked. When I send sound through my voice into her body, it's opening up energy blocks. Now I use my own voice, okay? And it's a very special gift. I have no voice training at all. Now, first I tone into the heart chakra, and then I tone into the crown chakra. You ready? And now I'll tone into her crown. Actually, I'd like you to sit up for that, okay? So, I've redone the hair as well. There's no charge for that. Thank you. Now the best person to ask what sound healing does is this being right here, because she just experienced it.
So how do you feel?
I feel very light and full and large. Not fat, but large.
Expanded.
Yeah, expanded, thank you. And like words, like if I tried to find a vocabulary right now, I don't know if it's necessary. That's pretty neat for me who talks too much.
I've come to a place where I'm starting to understand what is at the source and at the root of all of our religions and all our spiritual practices, and that I'm trying to, in my own way, create an integrational process. Since that time, I've had several out-of-body experiences. I have wild phenomena. I've been around 14 people when they've died. And one of the things that I've learned is that the animating spirit does not die, is indestructible. And that if you're there in the space where someone is dying, if you have the privilege to be there and you hold their hand, the dimensional portal, that vortex into eternity that they experience, it opens up, and part of you goes with them. She's nodding her head and she's agreeing because it's real. And this is what's going to transform us. Because in order to be there in that space where someone's dying, you also have to embrace the fact that you too will die. But the reality of it is it's a birth.
I'm Gwen Thomas. I work with Aura Imaging Systems, which is produced in Redwood City by Guy Coggins, which is Progen Company. And what I do is I take your aura photos, of course. We put you on a hand plate, which is biofeedback, and it measures the energy that comes off the acupuncture points in your hand. And it's fed from the pan plates into the modified Polaroid camera, and it measures using magnets and a low amount of electricity, measures how much energy is being put off by your body and the various different areas of your body, so that you come up with the aura that some of the psychics actually see. Most people don't see it, although they do get a sense of it by looking at skin tone and things like that. They kind of get a sense of the first layers of the aura. We don't even know we see it. We kind of go, oh, that person looks like they'd want to be purple, so let's get them a purple present. And you find out later the person likes purple, and that's because they have a lot of purple in their aura. This camera is actually a modified Polaroid camera, and it has a little light that flashes from the hand plate that after it measures the output. Now, I also have a computer, which I think is actually more interesting because this is much later technology. It is based on, by the way, Kirlian photography. But this computer is modern. It has the same hand plate. The hand plate is an exact copy inside, basically, of the other hand plate. The only difference is this one speaks directly to the computer. We can measure the output of the electromagnetic energy, again, from your hand, and it talks to the computer, and it tells it, hey, this is what it is. And through graphic imaging, we have the aura. If I put my hand on the plate, I have this currency set for chakras, and I don't know if you can see the screen, but I have currently now a yellow and green aura. It fluctuates. Your aura will actually change 5 seconds before your heart rate changes. So whatever comes into your energy field affects you before your heart rate is affected. Different auras mean different things. We have, I don't know if you can see this, but I'll hold it up for you. The red, which is very vital, sunny, which is yellow, kind of a growth, kind of blue is peaceful, purple is magical, and depending on, people, a lot of times people will, oh, I don't have a lot of vital energy because I'm purple, but they may be very physically strong, just be very spiritual. I used to think that red meant anger, and I've learned, having worked with the system and worked with people, that red is really very creative and passionate, and people that are red are just throw themselves into life. Well, this machine actually does read your chakras. As you can see, it's basically just a normal laptop and go on any computer. It's a program that we put on it, and you can actually get your program if you want. They're not cheap, but they're not all that costly. We do have a website, and I hope I can mention it. It's auratv.com or auraphoto.com. We have different hand plates, but we have left-handed and right-handed hand plates, and it doesn't actually make much difference. Oh, look at that. There's the orange. You can see all the orange because these are orange, and that's orange and pretty much orange. You see, I do see auras, but I like having the machine to verify them.
So that's my aura right there.
That's your aura.
Interesting.
And we can actually see the amount of energy that he's putting out. You can see all this orange, and he's getting a little embarrassed, and this is turning red. So you can see his energy graphs. He's actually a really nice guy. You can see how nice his little roots are here, the solar plexus, which is turquoise, and I'd say this is a guy that's very sensitive and sweet, and that's pretty cool, huh?
You read me like a book.
I read him like a book, a sensitive and nice guy. And lots of energy, too. He's physically strong. One thing that's interesting is shows the energy coming in, and you can watch the two auras interacting. And on our website, you can actually see two people interacting just hooked up to individual hand plates and watch those auras merge. So the technology is finally catching up with what the psychics have always said. We do have auras.
I changed in '94 from medical nursing to holistic nursing because I was very sick myself. I wasn't able to work for 2 years and I was flat in bed. This is Hirkani, which has been done for 5,000 years. The Egyptians did it, Tibetans, the Indians did it, the shamans would do it to help spiritual growth, to open up the third eye. Basically what it's doing is, because the top of the candle is lit, it's drawing up into the candle. It's creating a vacuum like a straw. Things are going up into the candle. Nothing's going down into the ear. So wax, debris, infection, bacterial, they will all come up into the candle. Candida, the fungus, make us very sick. It clears the sinuses. It opens up the senses. It helps the vision, the hearing, smell. It will help increase all those senses. Okay, so we're opening this one out and see what comes out.
You ever not get anything out?
Sure. So there's wax. It's the dark stuff. The light stuff is candida. That's the fungus I was talking about. Majority of people have it too much in their bodies due to our American diet. I discovered the frequency machine, a Rife machine, and it puts vibration into the body because everything in the world's vibration, so it'll put a vibration into, like, zap a certain parasite or chemical that can cause a disease, and then you remove it by drinking water. It's flushed out. And then the body can heal itself. Well, I didn't know anything about the machines. I discovered one at a chiropractor. A man went over there just to demonstrate it. He wanted 2 chronic patients, and I was very lucky to walk in that day. I had a session, and then I had 2 more sessions, so it took 2 weeks. They were 3 days apart. A session was an hour long, and they put some pads on my spine, and it was very comfortable. It was like a massage. I didn't really know what he was doing, but after 3 sessions, my spine was 100% well. 100% well. It was the first time in 2 years that I could sit in a chair. Other than that, before that, I was flat in bed or laying on my side on the couch with all these pillows propped. The sciatica pain went away. I later discovered that it was mercury. From my mercury filling settled in my spine, and the machine was able to remove the mercury. So I purchased the machine to try it out for the 30-day trial period on the rest of the body, and gallstones passed. I passed hundreds of stones after a couple treatments with no pain. Did not have any more gallbladder attacks. The diverticulitis and the spastic colon attacks went away. I later discovered through studying that that's all parasites. All the arthritis is gone and all the other symptoms. So I started doing this full time and seeing clients, and saw some wonderful results, and people were able to get off medication, and I'd say over 90% of people got well. Those that were dying of cancer and had chemo and radiation, of course, did not. It was too late because their immune system was zapped from the chemo and radiation. So I continued doing this since '94, and then last December there was a knock on the door, a loud, very loud knock, almost knocking the door down, and I was raided by 7 FDA with guns at their side, and they confiscated my 10 machines. And these machines have been around since the 1930s. There's a wonderful book that was written by Barry Lyons talking about Dr. Wright inventing these machines since 1930, the wonderful results he had. It was suppressed by the FDA and the AMA because they would lose money. The medical field is controlled by pharmaceuticals. When they write prescriptions, they order x-rays, there's all cutbacks involved. So it's very much suppressed, and it's very unfortunate. It's just a crying shame. Anyway, this is the search warrant and the raid. that was done, and it's been almost, it'll be a year in December, and I have not had anything returned, none of my, except my computer, which is broke. They destroyed the modem, they erased the hard drive, they took all my records, even personal calendars. They took all paperwork, including charges records, phone records, which had nothing to do with the frequency machine. And I have not yet gotten any machines back. They also raided the company at the same time, named the biotech company, and they actually shut them down also because they took all their equipment.
Remote viewing was a term that was coined by Ingo Swann in the early 1970s when they were doing research on the psychic abilities of Uri Geller, and it means to view something remote from you, a person, place, or thing remote from the person viewing it in time and space. Hence remote viewing. In other words, something far away and you're viewing something that is removed from you, if you will, not only in space but in time, which means you'd be able to see events in the past and the future, events in the present. And the unique thing about this is you can do this by simply being given a coordinate, several numbers, a word, and then an estimated time of view as to when you're going to see a target. So it's pretty amazing stuff.
So you take a journey?
Yeah, you move forward into the future, maybe half an hour when you're going to be shown the target. You're asked to give emotional feedback. The story is every picture tells a story, and so you put yourself in the picture, if you like. For example, one of the targets that we've used fairly often in the remote viewing is the Titanic, and so many people will actually feel as though the floor underneath them is swaying. They'll feel very cold. They'll feel panicked. They'll feel it rocking. They'll see things creaking or breaking in half. They'll draw pictures of boats. They'll draw the stacks on the tops of the boats. It's pretty amazing. They actually put themselves in the picture of what happens to the Titanic. It's pretty incredible.
And how did you learn that?
I was originally at Stanford University in '76, just taking some summer school classes. And then later on I started practicing in the early 1980s with a friend of mine, Dr. Elizabeth Targ, who died recently of cancer. And then simply continued with it for many, many years.
And do you remember your first viewing?
Yeah, actually I think the first viewing we did was we took a couple of kids out of class and had them wander around campus the next day, randomly taking a spinner and walking it like 15 minutes and then spinning a wheel on a twister spinner and walking randomly in a different direction, and then we described where they would be at exactly 2 p.m. the next day, even though they walked around the campus completely randomly for about 2 hours or so, and we described them at the base of the Hoover Tower, right there by the fountain. So it was actually a location of a couple of people putting ourselves into the target. But it's everything from fluffy cats to gingerbread houses to car crashes to military installations, crazy stuff like that.
Funny stories from the original Army unit that's been told to me by many of the members was that I believe it was the Air Force, it was one of the agencies came in and actually tasked them to look at something. And so they all started drawing these pictures of a triangle that was black and actually showed it flying and things like that. And when they turned it back in, they were all immediately brought in for debriefing. And this was back, in the late 70s, early 80s. I'm like, oh, how did you know about our secret aircraft? And this would be, the original, I think, the B-2, the original stealth bomber. And these guys had actually remote viewed the stealth bomber accurately. That's what they had been tasked to do. The Air Force guys could not believe that they actually got it and thought these guys had actually had inside intelligence on their project. And couldn't believe it. And actually, because of it, their project was funded again for another period of time.
Have somebody monitor the experiment, where you'll have the monitor of the viewing will usually pick a target, and will usually pick the numbers and the coordinate for the target and when they're going to show it to you. And then I sit back, and then they take notes as to what I'm feeling or what I'm seeing, and then we report on it and see what's right and wrong about actually hitting the target.
And the most amazing thing is if you take the remote viewer's work, you can actually cross-reference it with people like Peter Davenport, with Jim Mars, with Linda Howe, with Bud Hopkins, and you'll see that everything really does jive. And a lot of their notes actually date back 20 years ago when they were actually looking into these things. So it's really rather fascinating. Now, another twist to that is now that they're all civilians, quite a few of them are working on some nonprofit organizations that, such as the Assigned Witness Program, where they actually assign a remote viewer to remote witness a crime. It could be an abduction, it could be a missing child, it could be a murder, it could be any number of things, and they actually report what they see to law enforcement officials. And they've been very successful with that. They help hundreds of cases pro bono every year, you know, have an assigned witness to see what really happened.
My name is Michael Tessarian. I'm a researcher in ancient civilizations and secret societies. This is my latest book, Atlantis, Alien Visitation and Genetic Manipulation. I myself am from Ireland and have specialized in what the Celtic records, the Druidic tradition, the Celtic mythologies have to say about the concept of UFOs and alien visitation.
Could you tell me about the hollow inner Earth? What are your beliefs and what's your evidence?
Oh yes, the hollow Earth concept is another one that goes back to ancient times. This is not something new, and in my book I have lots of resources about the hollow Earth, about underground cities, caverns that are discovered in the Earth. I mean, you only have to look at your own mythologies. The trolls, the dwarves, the elves, where do they all come from? Why is it that we, in our burial ritual, right, in the Christian world, when you die, there's a ritual of being put back into the earth? Ask any Zuni Indian, ask any Hopi Indian about the hollow earth, they know exactly what you're talking about. It's completely replete in all the mythologies of the world about underground cities. In fact, Admiral Byrd from the United States Naval Air Force, right, he flew over entrances to the hollow earth. You have experts who know all about this, who've written extensively on the hollow earth, and caverns that sometimes go as far as 8 miles down, you know, with literally thousands of miles of ventilated shafts. Eric von Daniken has gone blue in the face trying to expose this, that these are caverns that some of them are not natural, some of them are carved with precision, with laser, you know, tools. And these, I explain from the outset of my book, I go into this, it's a very important factor. And in fact, there was even a prohibition in the Bible about drawing the likeness of any being that came from under the water and from under the earth, actually. It's in the Ten Commandments even. And you will find that if you go back to Celtic mythology, they are talking about beings that inhabited the hollow earth and under the earth.
I've studied a lot of the ancient texts that have been combined and written into several other old books. You know, Madame Blavatsky, she was a big fan of the hollow earth theory and actually traveled down to South America and was looking for entrances into the South American cave systems, which are actually connected to the other tunnel systems all around the world. And it's fascinating. And you can come into a modern city, any modern city, someplace as big as Dallas, and when they're putting in highways, freeways, sewer systems, they inevitably run into uncharted tunnel systems under Dallas. And these tunnels have strange tracks in them with these little cars that move by themselves. And you think it might be a coal type of mine, or there's no coal mining in Dallas. You can go into a real coal mining town like Bridgeport, Texas, where there were actually several shafts back in the turn of the century, about 1800s or so, where they put 7 or 8 shafts into the under the town of Bridgeport. But today, there's not 7 shafts anymore. The whole underneath of the town is a webwork of tunnels. Why? And who did it? You know, and I'm currently trying to get maps from the Railroad Commission to see, you know, why and where are they going, and you know, all the exterior entrances to these old coal mines are all sealed up, buried up. But many of the old buildings have secret access tunnels to the tunnel system underneath this town. So it gets rather fascinating.
Back again to the concept of secret budgets and secret societies. The governments of the world have long been seeking, because our pole shifted, and the Earth topography has changed, so lots of the normal entrances to Hollow Earth have since changed, and some of them were in Antarctica, and therefore the ice on Antarctica makes it a problem now for people to visit there and go there. So the Nazis under the Adolf Hitler and the fascists that rule this country, namely the government, they have always been funding different individuals to try and go and reopen portals and to find entrances to Hollow Earth. So Admiral Byrd was simply an agent who had flown over there, and he had a large budget, and they took ships out there, and some people say that they discovered entrances to Hollow Earth. There's also Hollow Earth entrances in the north, and I've researched this for many years, and I actually know where a great deal of entrances to Hollow Earth are. What brought Atlantis down was what the mythologies say brought it down, which was a war between the gods, or a conflict between beings that were called the gods, and the kinds of technologies that they were using. This is a motif that you find in mythologies of the ancient world. The beings who interfered with our history are still around, or at least their descendants are still around, behind the thrones of government. And not only do we have to deal with the existential problem of evil within ourselves, we also have to deal with the social nihilism, the governmental paradigm, right, coming out of the 11th century BC, where the great empires of Sumeria and Babylon rise, and they're based on tyranny, territorialism, suppression of the earth, suppression of women. All the later epochs, all the later empires are based on those paradigms. And then they say in the history books that history just stops at 11,000 years ago, or that's when it begins, right? And we don't know what happened before that. A complete fabrication, because all the ancient legends have plenty to tell you about what was happening before that, which was that there was high cultures, high civilizations, who fell by the misuse of magic, who fell by the misuse of energy. This is an old story going back, and we may be heading for the same thing. The Mayan calendar talks about the year 2012. They talk about it being the possible end of our world. I don't necessarily think it'll be the end of the physical world, but it will certainly be the end of the world as we know it, from a psychological, sociological, economical point of view. We can definitely expect many changes. We're already seeing that. And now with the attack on September 11th, there is very much a wake-up call to America in general and to the West in general to wake up, to discover that there is an occult history of their country, there is an alternative history of the world. And so my book also focuses on that. The latter part of the book is about solutions, about the occult history, how these alien beings have infiltrated into our societies and are still around. I address the reptilian concept, which has been, of course, the center of what David Icke has been doing, and we have certain differences. And Zachariah Sitchin's work, I talk about that. I'm in the tradition of these kinds of scholars. It is crucially important that this is not accepted as mere history lesson of the past. These motifs have a very great bearing on our age. We talk about the alien DNA from our human point of view. You could use the word evil. Maybe it's not quite the right word, but it certainly is a word that implies that whatever the alien mentality was, it was different than ours. And I'll be specific about that. One of the major differences is the fact that these alien beings came from a civilization that was extremely technologically advanced. I mean, you're talking, Mr. Spock and beyond, many grades further than where we are. And the Earth, in its pre-visitation state, was where our ancestors were very much in harmony with the Earth. Now, this doesn't mean much to most people anymore, but it certainly does mean a lot to shamanistic kinds of people and to early societies who understood what that meant, being in harmony with the Earth, where the mind and the Earth are at one. These visitors came in, and of course they didn't understand that, and they are very technologically, mentally advanced, without so much of the spiritual, human aspect. When they crossed our DNA, this is where we inherited this great inner schizophrenia within our own nature. And the sum total of that is the fact that today we have the criticism, and it's a correct criticism, that our scientific, technological abilities are far in excess of our psychological, spiritual, and emotional development. And many pundits, many activists, many scholars have said, why is this? Why is this happening in our society? Well, again, there is a definite answer. It's because we've had a propulsion unit behind us, making sure that we are propelled towards technological advance at the cost of the other. Because this is not something, again, that would happen naturally, right? It just doesn't happen naturally, and if you see it happening in the world, it is because there's some artificial engineering going on that makes sure of this. And it connects to what I'm talking about, where the visitation of these beings has been moving mankind steadily forward in a technological way because they have an agenda. And I talk about that in the book as to why they'd even want to be doing that. And when I talked about the Mayan calendar 2012 as an end game date, well, we're very close to that now. We're already past the new millennium. And philosophers, mystics, psychics are saying that time is going to actually speed up. And I think it already has. This whole 9/11, September 11th, is part of that cycle. Because the decade is better expressed as an ennead, an enneagram, which is divided into 3 sections, 3 triangles, if you will. The 9 years are divided into 3 threes, right? And the last of the first triangle ends in 2003, obviously. 2000 to 2003 is one triangle. So in November 2003, there could be another attack. There could be another debacle. There could be another wake-up call coming for America. It's all based on how well we do in our learning curve.